I started in comic books in '93. When I
Right.
started on Vampirella, and then at like maybe February or March of '94 is when I moved to California, and then like maybe 2 months after that I started at Image Comics. So it was '94. I think Image started in '92.
So who is John Stinsman and how did he get started in art?
Um, well, I grew up in New Jersey, and when I went and saw Star Wars, the original 1977 Star Wars, because I'm going to be turning 52 this year. So I'm an old dude now. But yeah, so when I went and saw Star Wars, we didn't have DVDs. We didn't have a lot of media that we could follow once we went and saw the movie. We had some comic books, we had some record books, some coloring books, maybe story books, things like that, but nothing like nowadays that the kids get to enjoy when they just, go, oh, I want to see Frozen for the 400th time. Oh, no problem. Here, let me just throw it in. We didn't have that. So my solution to that problem was to just draw my own Star Wars drawings and make my own comics almost. They were just one image drawings, but if I wanted to see R2D2 and C3PO again, I would draw them. And that's how I kept in touch with Star Wars. And then that was about when I was 5 years old. And I just moved forward from there, and I never lost my love for drawing. And that's all I ever wanted to do. And that's all I did up until, I got hired by, I worked, I worked in a comic shop that I got hired at about 16. And then by 18, I became the manager of that comic book shop.
Right.
And there was a writer who was local, who was just writing some small press stuff. And he asked me, would you like to draw one of my stories for a company called Parody Press, who was a big independent company at the time. And obviously, as their name would suggest, they just did parodies of anything. And my story was a parody of, oh gosh, what is that Christmas story? It's a Wonderful Life. That's what it was.
Yeah, it was in my head. I just couldn't remember what it was, but that's the one we always go to, right?
And we're talking back in like '92. It was a long time ago.
Yeah, but I mean, in New Zealand, we got to see it on replay here in black and white, and it's
sure, yeah.
Because it's from the '60s, isn't it?
Probably, yeah. I would say at least from the '60s. At least it might have been from the '50s. I don't know off the top of my head, but so instead of the angel coming down to save, the character that wanted to jump off the bridge, it was the Terminator who showed up and ended up talking him into not killing himself, but then the Terminator did what the Terminator does and killed him at the end. And that was the first thing I ever drew for a published comic book. And then a guy named Gary Carlson, who used to publish a book called Megaton Comics, who was the first person to ever hire Rob Liefeld, the first person, I think, to ever hire Eric Larson. I could be wrong on that one.
Yeah.
But Youngblood was actually out as a different, I forget what he called them, but they were like, some of the characters were published by Megaton Comics. And anyway, when Image started, Eric hired him to write some books for him. And he found that work and for some reason liked it and said, would you like to draw a backup story? Which I did. I spoke to Eric Larson on the phone a couple of times. It was very nice, very cordial, very cool, very chill dude. I mean, for me, a guy who just was getting into comic books and loved comic books his whole life. And obviously, Image had already started maybe like a year prior to that. It was mind-blowing to be sitting on the phone in New Jersey talking to Eric Larson. It was crazy. so I drew that story, but it was never published because I think Eric was just like, it's not quite up to snuff, which it probably wasn't. And then I met a guy who was working on for Harris Comics, and he helped me get in with them to draw Vampirella, which was my first comic book gig.
Right.
And then he was originally from, he was staying in New Jersey, but he was originally from California. And when he left Harris Comics to go get a job, he worked at Homage Studios before Image Comic Books, which is what Wildstorm. Homage Studios was what Wildstorm was before Image. So
H-O-M-A.
Yeah, like homage, like I'm paying homage to whatever.
Right. It's just the way you guys say it. It's just like, we
yeah.
just say homage. So this was like, is it an I-A-E-R? What am I looking to?
Yeah, I'm sure it could be pronounced many different ways. But the studio that he was with consisted of like Will Spatasio, Scott Williams, Jim Lee, Joe Chido, everyone who was, and even Mark Silvestri, because Mark Silvestri didn't have Top Cow in the beginning. He was part of Wildstorm. Yeah. Anyway, I'm getting off course.
That's fine. Yeah.
He invited me out to California and said, come work on Vampirella here. And since I work at Image Comic Books, I'll try to get you in there, which he did.
Yeah.
There's some discrepancy as to how it all went down. I tend to believe one person over another, but that's a story for another day. So Rob ended up seeing my work and said, yeah, let's get him on a book. So I would go into the studio at Extreme Studios, which is Rob's branch of Image Comics. Yeah. And I'd go down there and work with all my homies and brothers and everything. And started off on Bloodstrike, then Team Youngblood. And Team Youngblood, one of the stories had one of the female characters doing a Playboy-esque pinup for a magazine, which I drew.
I think I have that somewhere, or if I've had it and then sold it in a comic shop.
Yeah. It's basically Riptide, which is the female character, and she's on the cover naked, just holding a sign over herself. So, yeah, I drew that issue, and Rob said, I like the way you draw females, very sexy. Would you like to be a part of this book called Evangeline I'm going to be launching? And you couldn't have offered me anything better than that. So, yes, of course. Yeah. So we launched Evangeline from there. Did the first 3-issue miniseries. It was hugely popular. It was one of the highest. That's the ongoing series. The miniseries is the double page
right. Let me bring that up.
Chromium cover. I think you have issue 1, 2, and 3 of the miniseries.
The one that I have. Are you talking about this one here?
No, that's Evangeline Glory, which came out after the original miniseries. In the images that I sent over to you, it's one of the first ones in the
Awesome. Is that from the Awesome one?
Yes. Awesome Comics was, well, no, it's Maximum Press. Okay, anyway,
so there's Evangeline Tribal and Pendragon. Actually, you know what?
You have to go up to the very first ones I sent you.
I am going to share my folder where I've got that, so that'll be probably easier, and I'll get you to tell me which one it is.
Okay.
Right, so let's start from the top. So that.
Okay. They're all mixed up.
Yeah, it came down that way.
Okay, so the almost bottom row, 1, 2, 3, 4. Up. One more up. Nope, next one. Nope, there. Nope, you just had it. Nope, down. Nope, that's Scarlet Crush, right? Okay, listen. Just go up one, and then go right one. There you go.
Awesome. I didn't realize this was a Chromium as well. I'm going to have to hunt it down. I'm sure nobody's going to, nobody wants to get rid of it, but or share,
I mean, look, all these books were printed in the tens, if not hundreds of thousands, so they're very cheap. All 90s comic books are basically cheapo books, so you could probably find it for $5 USD or less, But that was the first issue of Evangeline.
Gorgeous, man. I mean,
Thank
look
you.
at like.
A very, 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 very long time ago. I think my art has hopefully and thankfully improved over the years. I don't draw 20-foot women with tiny heads anymore. But that was the style at the time. So that's.
I'm looking at this work, and it's just so amazing the way it's placed and everything. The church in the background, just the arched. I mean, someone who, like, for myself, with the art background and stuff, and who loves art, and especially on comic art. I mean, that is gorgeous, and it's got the things that I like, because I have a background. I mean, I used to go to a boarding school with nuns and stuff, right?
Right.
So the whole nun thing is appealing to me. I actually created my own religion for my series of books, which are coming out, which is like this whole cult or whatever religion is there.
Right.
And whenever I see nuns, I think that's really cool, because it's just like this whole virtuous and all this thing, but then you kind of think, how do you twist that onto its head sometimes, and I love this artwork. I mean, I'm going to have to try to find a copy, but like I was saying, in New Zealand, it's not cheap. The 90s and the Image Extreme stuff, the Maximum, stuff like Aspen and all that, it's $5 US is like probably like about $20 New Zealand.
Oh, really?
Taxes and stuff, so it keeps going up. I mean, the exchange rate is a killer. I mean, I just did a PayPal purchase from one of our friends, and it turned out to be about 333, and it was only around about 220 US or something like that. Or even less. No, actually, it was about 175, I think. So the exchange rate is a killer.
Yeah. That is one of the better things about living in the U.S. is that we're basically the hub of all pop culture for the most part. And so, we get the cheapest prices, although the prices are not as cheap as they used to be, obviously. But I do feel bad for people who live outside the U.S. when they're trying to get their fix, their geek fix, because it's not cheap. I mean, we can go to, I went to a convention last week, and it was just nothing but the entire room full of dollar boxes of comic books, by the hundreds and hundreds of thousands of comic books, all $1.
I'll be whipping out, like, here's 500, just hold it, and I'm going to go 500, and I'm just going to grab it. You just number off, please. I've done that before, right?
I'm sure.
I went into, like, when I was setting up my store back in 2014, I went to a convention here, which is the biggest one in New Zealand, which is called Armageddon Expo. And I just went and I'm setting up my shop, and here's $500, and can you give me a whole lot of anime stuff? And then I went to my friend Jeremy Bishop, who I've known since 2007, so it's about 7 years later. I said, hey Jeremy, I'm setting up my shop. I don't know what to get. Can you just give me $500 whatever that's new now? And he and I just got my who at that time was my landlord, right? I just said, because I don't have a car, so I said, all right, we're going to take these boxes. So we just took the boxes, and that became the set. And but we've got some friends in the chat saying hello. This is Pete Vasquez.
Hey, Pete.
Hello, and how you been? And then you got Neostar.
Yeah, right on. Yeah, I recognize him.
You. I have no idea who that is, but I mean, hell.
Hey, whatever gets them excited.
So you're 16 years old, right? You're running your comic shop. Are you assistant? Are you managing later? Or
I was just a grunt at first, and the name of the comic shop was called Heroes World. If you grew up in the 70s and you ever had comic books in the 70s, you will remember their ads, because they were all hand drawn. They were a mail order business before they were a full-time, comic shop. They used to just do mail order, and they would, basically do anything that was comic books related.
Right.
Toys, Star Wars. I mean, anytime you can go through any 70s comic book, and you will find a full-page Heroes World ad in there where you could have bought stuff. And then they did stores up and down the East Coast, and became, Diamond is basically the only distributor. Well, not the only distributor in these days, but for most of, the late 80s through the 90s, they were. Or until recently, probably. but Heroes World was also a comic book distributor for the East Coast. So they created their stores, and they were supervised by the Snyder family who created Heroes World, and the guy who owned the company liked me, and when the manager left, he said, "Do you want to be the manager?" And I said, "Yeah, sure, of course. Who wouldn't want to be the manager of a comic shop at 18 years
It's a
old?"
dream, right?
So that's
So
what I did.
So you're
And
16 at this point, or you're
I was about
younger than
18
that?
when I became the manager. 18, 19 probably, just getting out of high school. And it was fun during that time because to be in a comic book shop at the maximum ultimate
Yeah.
height of comic book sales and excitement and all that stuff, with the launch of Image and the death of Superman and McFarlane's Spider-Man. I mean, it was just everything was just gelling at that time. And
Is it 1990 or is it 91?
Well, I
Because I know for you
graduated in
guys it's
90.
earlier
So
than for us when we realized it.
I was 18 in 1990 because I know I graduated high school that year. So I don't remember specifically, but I moved out. I started in comic books in 93. When I
Right.
started on Vampirella. And then at like maybe February or March of 94 is when I moved to California. And then like maybe 2 months after that, I started at Image Comics. So it was 94. I think Image started in 92. So I was,
Right. Yeah, it has to be after that whole debacle with Liefeld and Deadpool and all that, right?
Oh yeah. It
Uh,
was, he'd already left Marvel for years at
yeah,
that point, so it's funny because, the Deadpool that was created by Rob is not the Deadpool that exists today. And
yeah,
I'm not saying, saying that to take anything away.
yeah,
It's just interesting that because, Rob did Deadpool and it was, a popular character, popular
yeah,
enough, not like up there. And he
yeah.
left and did Image.
I have my brother-in-law bought me the light logo. It's about this big. It's always on. I have
Hmm.
toy. I don't think I have a toy, which is weird because I have freaking thousands of toys. Well, hundreds and hundreds. But I have T-shirts, I have hoodies of Deadpool. I've given gifts as T-shirts to my niece of
Hmm.
Deadpool, and I have books and I have the first appearance and all that stuff. But so, I mean, that's when that thing came out in 2016. I knew it was going to blow up,
Hmm.
because that little short film teaser thing, and to see that now, because at that time I had my comic shop, and to see that now, it's just to see one little creation like that from someone that's alive now, not someone that's alive in the past.
Right.
But
Yeah. Sure.
it's
Hmm.
just such a cool experience. But now we see a lot more people do that, right? Invincible, Walking Dead, all that. But I
Yeah.
mean, and all those are from like an Image,
Hmm.
So what was it like at that time working at Maximum? Did you start? You started first at Extreme, wasn't it? And then
Well,
move up
yeah.
to it.
So basically, I don't want to get into the behind the scenes details because it's not my business to do that. But, uh, we had Image Comics, we had Extreme. It was all the same studio. Nothing changed as far as that. It was just the
Yeah,
stamp that went on the book.
yeah,
Rob decided to start a separate publishing company outside of Image called
mm,
Maximum Press.
right,
The reasons for that will remain his to tell.
yeah,
Uh, and that's where Evangeline landed there.
right,
Um, but it was still the same. There was nothing internally that was different at all. I still worked in the same place, still same, worked for Rob. Everything
yeah,
was identical. The same colorists, same inkers, same everything. It was, like I said, it was just the name of the logo on the comic that was different.
yeah,
And so yeah, so that's where Evangeline landed, and I did that book for the rest of my time with Rob there
right.
until he parted ways with Image, and that was that. And then once that was
So
over,
hold on. So you were 18 at this point because you got hired what around
oh
about
no,
18?
we're talking '94, so I was probably like 26 by the time Evangeline ended.
Okay.
you know,
I know.
25, 26.
So when did you start there? Like, was it about
94.
94, right? So
Right. So I was
94 and then
22.
96, 2 years?
Hmm.
Wow.
Aboutish, maybe. I'm not good with dates. I'll be honest. I'm not good
Yeah.
with
Um,
specific dates. I really
yeah.
just am not. They're just memories in my head, which I can recall the memories pretty intricately, but I'm not good with numbers.
Mm,
So you have to forgive me for that.
that's fine. Yeah. So, I mean, I'm looking at these covers and I'm wondering, like, how many, like, issues did you work on? You know, like, there's
I mean,
so
back
much.
then I did a lot of stuff. I mean, that's
Yeah.
that's only half of what the covers that I, drew from the books that I worked on, as well
Yeah.
as, just covers for other books. It's about half of, what I had sent over to you.
Mm,
Um, this is, I'm going to give a shout out to the late, great, wonderful friend, Drew Posada, who colored this cover. He was a colorist over at Image Comics. A colorist at Extreme.
yeah.
He and I were very good friends, and he unfortunately passed away not long after Rob broke ties with Image. But before he passed away, he got a job working at Bain Studios, which only represented two artists at the time, which was Soriyama and
Yeah.
Olivia de Berardinis. That was it. He was the third artist to be taken in by that studio,
Right.
to be represented. And his work is gorgeous. I would suggest anyone just do an image Google search on Drew Posada. Look him up. Look at his gorgeous, amazing work. I would have loved, loved, loved to see what he had continued to do throughout his life, but unfortunately, we didn't get to see that. But we still have plenty of his work to look at, including
How do you spell his surname, John?
Posada. Posada.
Posada.
Yes, that's correct.
So just fun chat there, guys. If you if you want to search up the name and see his work, it's good. But what I was thinking was, like, when I was looking at there's something that a lot of people don't know, that colorists don't get credit. So one thing I was doing here, and I mean like credit on the thing. So when I was looking at this, there's Marlo there, who's your inker, right?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And so you got John there, but you don't see the colorist mentioned here.
He would
Of
usually
course,
put his name on there. He would usually
I don't.
put Drew. That's what he was known
Okay.
by, is Drew. So he would usually
Right.
put his name on the covers, and he would certainly get credit for his work in the interior of the book.
That's what I was going to mention. It's always in the interior you get that, so you get
Yeah.
credit there. And yeah, it's such a awesome piece of work. I mean, I'm looking at the characters in the back as well. I recognize those characters as well, because part of the Evangeline world. And so you worked 2 years of Evangeline.
Right.
Well, like, I mean, I don't want you to get into politics, because I don't really like talking about politics or
Sure.
religion on the show. But what was the experience like? Because you're 26, 24, going to 26 here.
Yeah.
You've got a background in reading comics, and drawing, and I mean, to think that you started at 5 years old and you kept at it, and here you are being hired at one of the most popular companies of its time at that point, with work that's like, everywhere. And with Rob, with this the superstar thing that he had going with
Sure.
with the news, people doing articles on him, and actually on Image itself, and everybody there. Because I've seen those interviews, because now we have the beauty of internet. You can just go, Rob,
Right.
1990s, yeah, it's there.
Sure.
Whereas
Yep.
before, at that time in New Zealand, there was, what's happening? Oh, okay. If the LCS guy knows it,
Right.
or if it's something, and you're like, wait, if you're not following friggin' New Mutants, you missed out, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I was, and so I had that. Then I had everything. New Mutant was my thing. I mean, like, mutants was my thing. So I didn't know much about the whole fact that this is a brand new character. Didn't mean nothing to me. I'm just reading a story, enjoying it.
Sure.
And, years later, you find out, oh, it was this big, huge deal that happened, and they all ran away to create their own company. It's like, really?
Yeah. Yeah. Yep.
And you know, and now you can just go, oh yeah, it was that and that and that, and I watched the documentary and you know how it's set up, and so to talk to someone who was there at the time or just after creating is amazing to me as someone who loves comic book history and comic book creators, and just that, you know, how it all comes about is very interesting to me.
Yeah.
So those 4 years there, what was it like? Was there mentoring going on? What was like, you know, working amongst the others like?
I mean, we were pretty much left to our own devices to do what we do. We would, you know, I know that the other studios, like Mark, would pick out certain, you know, Mark Silvestri at Top Cow would pick out certain artists that he felt he could mentor. Same with Jim Lee. Rob didn't really do that. He just sort of let everybody do what they were doing, and we would find our own way to try to get better. And certainly Stephen Platt, I think, was a huge influence on, who worked at the studio there, was a huge influence on a lot of the artists, because, you know, Stephen would turn in a new page and everyone would photocopy that page and hang it on the wall in front of their desk to inspire them to continue to try to get better and better. But we were pretty much left to our own devices, even with Evangeline #1. I remember the writer, Bob Napton, and I were invited into Rob's office so that he could sort of help us, you know, move forward with issue #1. Let's have the meeting. Let's see. And Rob said, he sat us down and he said, okay, so Evangeline, I see her. She's, you know, just landed on Earth. She's in a trench coat. It's dark. It's rainy. She's walking down an alleyway. She finds her way into a church. She's greeted by a priest there. And yeah, you guys just run with that. That was it. That was literally the first 4 pages of the first issue. And that was it.
Wow.
And Bob Napton and I just, you know, brainstormed the rest of the miniseries. But the miniseries was so hugely successful that Rob now saw, okay, I want to be more involved with this because, you know, this is popular, you know. So he started doing covers for it, so on and so forth, and started being more involved with the stories. But by the time we got around, we did the Evangeline miniseries, and then we did Evangeline Glory, which is the book you have, Evangeline Power, and Evangeline Deadly Sins. These were 2 other miniseries. And then we launched the ongoing series.
Right.
And Rob had come up with this. He had seen the Demi Moore, I forget what magazine it was off the top of my head, Vanity Fair, I think, cover where she was naked holding her belly and she was pregnant. And
yeah,
Rob
I remember
said,
that.
oh,
very iconic. Yeah.
Yes, right. It was a huge, 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 huge story in the news. And he thought, well, let's piggyback off of that and get Evangeline pregnant. And I said, oh, God, it's the worst idea in the history of ideas. I didn't like the idea at all. I just thought, here's the thing. I had to live with Evangeline and draw her. So when I do that, I get into the character's head, into their persona, because how can I do intimate gestures and hand, you know, whether it be a look on the face or a hand gesture, you know, she was very demure. She was an angel of God. That to me, that meant something. It didn't mean barbarian warrior with the sword. You know, we've already got Xena. We don't need another Xena. We've created something that is angelic and beautiful and you know, should be representative of what she is. And that's how I represented her. I still disagree with every other, and I don't mean to be, you know, diminishing what other people have done by any means, but I don't agree with any other interpretation that has existed of that character, and I don't agree with Rob's interpretation of the character. I mean, he just did put out a Comic-Con comic at San Diego Comic-Con that's a republishing of all my penciled work on issue 1 and a few other things. And on the cover he drew, she looks like an overgrown Amazon barbarian woman. That is not who she is. She is elegant. She is a child, you know, a creature of God. And that elegance, regardless of what she's doing, should come through. And that's what I tried to represent with the character anytime I drew her. And Evangeline has existed at other companies, as Rob would not loan her out, but sort of like lease her out, I guess you could say, to other companies, and their depictions of her, Evangeline is not going to wear purposely half naked clothes. You know what I mean? Like, the reason that she's wearing what she wears on the cover in the comic book, and how I tried to make it work, was that that was all she had. You know what I mean? She stumbled across that uniform. She stumbled across it. You know what I mean? That's what she had available to her when she started her career as an angel on Earth, and that's what she looked like. But for her to pick her own costume or create her own costume where she's wearing fishnets and her tits are out and all this stuff, just doesn't make sense to me. It doesn't.
There is something when you're working on something and you're living with it, you get to it becomes a part of you, right? It's and I mean, like, as a writer and I'm creating something, I know my audience that I want this book to go to. I know if it's a PG audience, if it's a mature audience, or if it's an R audience, right?
Right.
Or adult. So as I'm writing that, I am going to flesh that story out for that, but I still want my character to develop into what I have in my head and how it's going to be out there. And I'm going to protect that character so that it's always, when somebody says, "Oh, what about this?" It's like, no, this is the character. Well, it's like a story, right? And I've had people come up to go, "Well, why don't you do this?" No, this is the thing. Well, this is the story. We're not going to do anything else, but this is the story. Yeah, if you want to do that, go write another one yourself and you do whatever you want with it. But this is the story. And I think sometimes this is why I, get upset with like changing of characters and stuff over it with the mainstream, over Marvel and DC, because we as readers have grown up with these characters and we know what they are. And it's really hard to then suddenly see it portrayed another way. And it feels like you've been bait and switched. And nobody likes to be bait and switched as a customer, let alone as a
what
reader.
These companies don't understand is that to the audience that grew up on these characters and still love them to this day, they're as intimate to these people as they are to their family.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It would be like if someone replaced your uncle or your mother with a different character or a different gender or whatever. You know what I mean? If you have an uncle or your one of your parents who might be divorced marries someone new, then we bring them in and we try to feel like if we can accept them or not. That's fine. But don't replace my mother with someone else.
Yeah.
It's like, don't replace my Captain America with someone else, or don't replace my whatever it is that you are tied to with that nostalgia. And it's important and it's meaningful, and it's still to these old people like me. And maybe you, I don't know your age, but
I'm 50. So we're only about 2 years apart. Yeah.
Right. So we're close. We might be old men, but these things are still important. Star Wars. I grew up on Star Wars. I grew up on Marvel. I grew up on comic books. Transformers, G.I. Joe, blah, blah, blah. All these things are super important to me still to this day. A very close emotional tie, probably more so because I'm in that world, working, as opposed to just maybe observing. But still, I think the observers or the readers are probably even more tied to these characters than even I would be, because I can create my own. But it's just a shame when I see the disrespect to the audience, because if the audience had not supported Marvel comic books for the last 60 years, if that audience did not support those comic books, Disney would have nothing to buy.
Yeah.
And so for Disney to come in and buy it and then try to change it by dismissing 60 years of buyers and readers and lovers of these stories and characters to replace them with other things is so horrible. It really is. It's just disgusting to me. But that's, again, a story for another day that I'd be happy to discuss.
Yeah.
Certainly more than enough people are discussing it anyway.
Exactly. So you're at 26 years old,
Mm.
and what's happened? Like you finished up Evangeline, and then
So I had no job. I was out of a
wow,
job. So I had to come up with something, which I came up with Scarlet Crush, which was my own creator-owned series that I wrote and drew. I took it to Image Comics, and the publisher at the time, Larry Martyr, said, "I'm interested, but we're going to have to go through the proper channels to get this published." Rob Liefeld heard about me pitching it to Image and said, "I've got awesome comics now. I'm doing it with Jeff Loeb. We've got
mhm.
funding. We've got money. Come bring it to us, and we'll publish it." And I said, "All right." So they weren't far from where I lived in LA. Um, and I went down and had a meeting with Matt Hawkins, who was my editor at Extreme for most of the time and is now the publisher of Top Cow Comics for the last like 20 years. It was him, Eric Stevenson, Jeff Loeb, and Rob. So it was four of them. And they had to go vote, whether or not to bring Scarlet Crush into Awesome Comics. And it was a 3-1 vote. And my assumption was that Jeff Loeb, who had no idea who I was the no vote. And I can almost be assured of that. But anyway, it didn't matter because it was 3-1. So I got published there. I did issue 1. I did issue 2. It was supposed to be 4 issues with the potential of an ongoing. And then I was working on issue 3, and I got a call from Jeff Loeb and Rob on speaker, and they said, "Stop working because our funder has pulled all our money, and we got nothing to pay anybody with. So we're done. Everyone here is done. We're all done." And there was a lot. I mean, if Awesome Comics had continued with the books they were publishing, with the talent that they had, I have no doubt that they would have been rivals of Image Comics for sure. Huge talent going on at that company, of which I was probably the lowest on the totem pole of.
Tell us a bit about Scarlet Crush. To be honest, this is the first time I'm hearing about this character,
Okay.
and
Mm-hmm.
and the other thing is, I like the fact she's redhead. I love redhead, right? So
I wanted,
yeah,
it's eye catching. I mean, there wasn't a lot of redheads in comic books. There was only a few, and I thought brown and blonde. Everyone's seen brown haired, but redheads. Let's make her a redhead. So Scarlet Crush is the name of the book. It's not the name of the character. I know everyone
okay,
calls her Scarlet Crush, which is fine because there isn't her name is actually Icaria, which is a play on Icarus. If you know
right.
the lore, the old Greek mythology of
So
Icarus.
too close to the sun.
Right, exactly. On wings of wax. So she has a similar experience in issue 2. And I just thought, you know what? That's kind of a name that I just made up that no one's ever heard of, Icaria, female version of Icarus. And it could be representative of her plight and her story. But I got the name Scarlet Crush from the fact that, okay, I thought Scarlet because she has red hair. And her father, when she was young, used to call her Scarlet. But I was so steeped in anime, and I was watching a ton of anime that, to me, the name of the anime made no sense to what I was watching. Bubblegum Crisis makes no sense to the story of what
one of the
my
greatest,
favorite
right?
anime.
Yeah.
So I thought, let me just go with this ambiguous, weird name for the book, which was Scarlet Crush. So that's what we did, and I had the best time of my life. It was the height of my career to do my own creator-owned comic book that I wrote and drew, because that's all I did prior to getting into comic books. Prior to getting into comic books, I wrote and drew my own characters. I colored them, I inked them, I lettered them. I did every part of the job, and I am bringing her back. Hopefully, sometime this year, if I can. If you go on my Facebook page, there's a couple of new images on there that I did of the characters. The audience convinced me that this was the book to bring to crowdfunding because I had a completely different story in mind. Completely different characters, completely different story. And I alluded to the fact that I was going to be doing a Kickstarter, and I was just getting inundated with questions of, is it Scarlet Crush? Is it Scarlet Crush? Is it Scarlet? And I thought, who's going to remember that book? Who's going to remember a 2-issue comic book story that came out 20 years ago? But the audience convinced me that they love that character. They love that book. They still remember it fondly. And I thought, well, if I can come up with a story that makes sense to me, that I feel like I can do, I'll do it. And I did. So I'm excited to do it. I've got the first issue pretty much all written out, and it's going to be continuing from where the first two issues left off, not a direct continuation, but you won't have to have read the first two issues, but if you do, you'll be able to follow the new story a little bit easier. And they just basically, there's 4 members of the crew that are in that book.
Mm-hmm.
You've got Ikaria, you've got Tyra, you got Max Scorpio, and Lennox. Those are the 4 characters of the book.
Right.
And
for those of us who don't know what that story is about, tell us a bit about the character. And because look, I'm excited, right? Because for me, I saw the wings on that cover, and I'm thinking, does she have wings as well?
Yeah,
like
just mechanical. It's a mechanical backpack. That's all it is. Yeah, she doesn't have any superpowers. It's a sci-fi story. It's all science fiction, so it takes place in that kind of world, so I can have a huge monster character, because, when you do sci-fi, you can pretty much dream up anything, and it works. But Max Scorpio and Ikaria are both just human people. That's it. They lived on Earth. They grew up on Earth. The main character of Ikaria, she was with the police department. Her father was a scientist, gets kidnapped, wants to lead a team to rescue him and find him, and her police force doesn't seem to want to help, so she goes and tries to find outside help to get her father back. And in the second issue, they do find him, but he is unfortunately taken away in a spacecraft, and she chases after him, but her wings don't work in the atmosphere. They only, or in the stratosphere, they only work in the atmosphere. So her wings shut down, and she fell back to Earth. She got caught by her team, rescued her, and then that's where we left off with issue 2. Also in issue 2, which is going to be pivotal to the new issue, is that her police chief is seemingly in line with the people who kidnapped him, and he hires a enormous beastly creature, a bounty hunter, to basically eradicate her and her team from causing any problems.
So is that what we saw on that cover? Sorry, John. This person here? In the background.
Yep, that's the bounty hunter that will appear in the first issue, and he is going to completely, absolutely 100% decimate the entire team. And under those circumstances, they have to find a way to still defeat him. But we're going to pick up. I always like to start stories somewhat in the middle and work my way back to a point, and then move forward from there. That's just, I like doing the Quentin Tarantino style of storytelling, where you start in the middle of something. And you go, how did we get here? What the heck's going on? I don't understand. Oh, you'll understand. Just keep with it, So that's how this story is going to start off in issue 1. It's going to be, they have already engaged this bounty hunter, or he's engaged them on board their ship, and they are just completely in over their heads, all of them. And they do not do well against him at all. At the end of the issue, you're just going to be like, how in the hell are they getting out of this? Because it doesn't seem like it's possible. But the thing is that they realize, or maybe the audience will realize, that if they actually work as a team, then they can do a lot more than individually, as they've been, because they're new. They're used to doing things a certain way as individuals. And it doesn't work against this particular character. So they need to sort of come together as a group and realize their power that way. And that's where we're going to set off from there.
Right. I just want to bring up this other image, and that shows a bit more of the wing, because you've got 2 of my favorite things, right? Which is wings and redheads. And so this is going to be, this is one I'm going to be chasing on Kickstarter. So tell us about how much of the work on this have you done?
Just a few promo things. I mean, when you're the writer, the penciler, the inker, and the colorist, things take a long time. and I'm not looking to rush anything.
Mm.
I know that some people are not fond of the way Ethan Van Sciver did Cyberfrog, making people wait that long.
Yeah.
However, I will say this. If you look at those books, they are beyond compare visually.
Yeah. And
Visually beyond compare. There's
that
nothing
too.
else out there in the crowdfunding universe that I've seen that touches the amount of pure hard work that went into drawing those comic books. I would like to present
Yeah.
something, my best work to the audience. I feel like they deserve it.
Yeah.
Ethan's concept of crowdfunding is in its purest form, in the sense that I'm presenting you with what I'm going to do. If you would
Yes.
like to see it, give me the money to make it. Not
Yeah.
here it is, give me the money and I'll send it to you. That's how a lot
Yeah.
of books are done these days. And I respect both ways of
Yeah.
doing it.
Yeah.
However, I can give the best product to the audience is how I'm going to do it.
Yeah.
If the
That's
audience
where
is
I'm
there
with
for
that
it, then
as
great.
well.
What's that?
That's where I'm with that as well, because I keep correcting and I keep fixing and I keep fixing and I keep fixing. And if it's going to take me a year until I fix it out,
Mm-hmm.
I need to be happy in myself to go, here it is.
Right.
Otherwise, 6 months down the road, I'm going, why?
What? Right.
I
Yeah.
just
Sure.
waited. Why
Mm-hmm.
did I do this? If I just waited. I mean, I published a comic about 2 years ago with Incritical, right, which just came out into recently on Kickstarter and was
Mm-hmm.
funded there. But that was a second attempt at it, because I'd already self-published here in my own art with my own, older art style, and I didn't like it. I was so gutted that I'd spent my own cash and did a short thing, and then I looked at it and went, this is never gonna stand up against Marvel and DC. And that's what I want to do. I want to be able to put on the shelf next to any other book and then
Sure.
go, there,
Mm-hmm.
this is my best
Right.
that I can produce at the top of what I'm producing right now.
Right.
And
Mm-hmm.
and I think that's where Steve, EVS is at, Ethan, right?
Right.
So, because look, at the end of the day, the customer is a customer, and if they understand that you want to give them, they don't mind waiting.
It's communication. That's all it takes is communication. If you communicate with your audience and they know that you're still there, you're still invested, you give them updates, I think they'll hang with you. I know that the work I do today will hopefully be better tomorrow, and I'm willing to accept that. I'm not, so anal about what I draw that, there's always another chance. Every day that I do work is another day to do better. And I will say this, if I stagnated, if I didn't have that mindset, I would not want to draw anymore. I'm not discouraged. When I see people who are 1,000 times better than me, I'm inspired, not discouraged, always inspired to do that level of work. And without that, I have nothing to drive me forward, and I would not want to do this. So I accept the fact that this is what I can do today, and tomorrow I hope I can do better. And the chasing of that apple, so to speak, is what is exciting about writing and drawing, coloring, because when I got into comic books, I always wanted to be a writer artist, always, because that's what I was prior to getting into comic books, was writing my own characters, creating my own characters. But, when you get a job in comic books, you take what you can get, which is, in my case, penciler. And that's what I did. I just penciled comic books, other people's stories, until Scarlet Crush. And then when I got out of comic books, because after Scarlet Crush, I went ahead and did Lady Pendragon at Image Comic Books with Matt Hawkins for about 2 or 3 years.
Thank you for bringing that up. I was going to ask about Lady Pendragon, what's that about, and where, how that came about, because that's a name I know, but not much. And so, and that's actually recently that I actually saw it online again, and I was like, just, I don't know how or what, but I was like, what's happening with this character? What happened to that character? How did it come about?
I mean, I'll be honest, Matt Hawkins was the creator and writer of that character.
Okay, and Matt. Yeah, I know that. Yeah.
So he was the writer and creator. He put a single issue of the comic book out that was drawn by Mike Deodato. when we were all at Extreme Studios and Image Comics together. And he just did the one issue. But when he lost his job at the same time I lost my job, and so he came to me and said, "Do you want to be the artist on Lady Pendragon? I want to bring that book back," because that was his only existing IP at the time. And I said, "Yeah, that'd be fun, man. I need a job, and it's a cool character, and let me, I'll draw some horses and some medieval stuff, and it'll be fun." And it was. So I worked on that book with him for a while, and then he got the job at Top Cow, and was so busy with that he had to let go of Lady Pendragon. I sort of stagnated and wondered, like, what the hell am I going to do? And my friend Patrick Blaine, who's another artist, said, "Look, I'm working in animation. Do you want to come over and show your portfolio?" And I said, "Well, yeah, I need a job. Hell yeah." So I became the art director and art supervisor of the art department / art director / director of some scenes for a movie for a couple years that we worked on. I won't mention it. It's terrible. We all hate it. None of us mention it. None of us speak of it.
I've been there.
But it paid really good money. It paid wonderful money. I loved it. I loved the money, hated the job. And after that ended, I realized that if I'm going to get jobs outside of comic books, I have to be a complete artist. I can't just pencil. No one wants to hire, if I draw a soup can for Campbell's, they don't want a penciler. They want a finished drawing. So I said, I got to learn Photoshop right quick. I better do that. And I did. And so I've been coloring my own work since about maybe 2005. I've colored all my own work. Since then, I've done a few independent comic books. One was named Stormbringers. Various on and off things, in the comic book industry, but it had been a while. Until recently, maybe like last year, I think, maybe the year before, when Larry Higgins, who does Niobe, contacted me and said, would you do a cover for my comic book? I loved Evangeline, and I don't know if you're still drawing. So through him and meeting all these other people, I was able to get in, and now I'm doing tons and tons of covers for all these different indie creators, and I'm having so much fun doing it, and working on the story for Scarlet Crush to bring her back. I did some promo images, like I said, that are on my Facebook. But I'm super excited about doing that. I wish I could just do that. But I also realized that I'm growing. I have my built-in audience from the 90s, but I need to expand and grow to a modern audience. And a lot of new people are getting exposed to me and my work through all these covers that I'm doing. So
that's what I was thinking. It's like, you're doing all these covers and stuff. You're bringing a whole new. Every cover you do for somebody else, those people have their own audience. Now they come along to you because of seeing your art there. And then you over here, you got Niobe and your work. I saw some other work on other places from your Facebook, and I'm thinking, all these people are now going to be supporting Scarlet Crush when Ikari comes back. And
I would love to have people come on board and support it, and I'll give you the best work I can give you, the best story I can give you, and I'm not looking to phone anything in. We don't know how much time we have left in this world, and I want to make sure that what the mark that I leave is worth it, not some half-ass career that you could tell I didn't. I mean, I see people do that. Unfortunately, they just don't care. But yeah, I'm in it because I grew up on it. From my first comic book, I was probably 4 years old. A Spider-Man comic book, and then when I was 5, I collected Star Wars, and then in first grade, I got into basically the entire Marvel and DC world. I had a friend who had all those comic books. I really only collected Star Wars, and he's like, "Have you seen all these?" And I'm like, "Oh, I knew about Spider-Man, I knew about Batman, but what is Legion of Superheroes, and what is Avengers, and what is Defenders, and what is..." So it was, I've been in it from the get-go. So I want to leave something behind that's worth, looking at and reading.
It's like your legacy, right? Do you have children, John?
No, I don't. Mm-mm.
Right. So people like us who don't have children, the work becomes our children. right?
It does
becomes
in a
our
way, yeah.
legacy. It
Yeah.
becomes our things that we're proud of. And if we half-ass that pride, legacy,
Yeah.
people will look back and oh, he didn't really put his effort into it,
Yeah.
and it'll be gone away. And like, I mean, like, that's the thing. When I came to doing Incredible, I was like, I don't want people to recognize this as my seminal character for all ages. I want to
Sure.
make sure when it goes there, it's the best, right? The
Hmm.
colors are the best that I can afford, or whatever. The art is amazing, and all this stuff, because we don't have to go, oh, here's a child I've created with my, partner, and he's going to do, or she's going to do carry on my legacy. Our
Sure.
legacy becomes our IP, or
Hmm.
intellectual property, as they say. But it's really our character. This was like looking at Scarlet Crush. I'm thinking it's got the red hair, it's got the wings. It's this amazing sort of idea, that comes from, like you're saying, like Flight of Icarus. I mean, like,
Right.
how the way I got to know Flight of Icarus is from Iron Maiden,
Hmm.
and then reading the story
Right.
later,
Right.
going,
Yeah.
it's a
Yeah.
real story. What? It's a real book. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's from history,
Hmm.
and mythology and stuff. And I'm like really excited. I'm thinking, wow, this is such a cool idea to actually have that sort of in comic form, and then to bring in into a sci-fi elements and all that. And it's like the creator, my head's going, wow, 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 because as a writer and creative, I'm like going, wow, that's gonna, like, I can envision, all these things you can do with it. Like you said, sci-fi stories, you can go anywhere with it,
Sure. Yeah.
and
Absolutely. Hmm.
and the fact that you are choosing to take your time at it, should be applauded and lauded. And I'm sure, whenever, when you do bring it out, it'll be amazing work, because
Hmm.
you are, and people see you saying, I'm
Thank
going to
you.
put my foot forward.
Mhm.
And so talking about Scarlett, when did you actually first draw her out? I mean, like,
I created her basically at the same time around the book. I didn't have anything specific. I had stuff from my childhood that I had created. I had tons of it, so many characters and stories. But I just went with something new, and I just thought, I'm so popular for having drawn Evangeline. I need
yeah,
to sort of capture that same audience, and
right,
do a female lead book. I'm not going to say that didn't influence me, because it did. It had to. And so I just created her on the spot, and I had some help from some friends to color and letter a few things for me. And Drew Posada among them. He colored the very first drawing that I did of her, that I used as the promotional thing to get the book published. I wish I still had that drawing. I don't have a copy of it. I lost so much. But anyway, no, I launched her right around the same, created her around the same time as the book, and it just something that came into my head. I wanted to do sci-fi. I mean, if you read the first issue and you see a ton of things that you feel like, wow, this guy was really inspired by Star Wars, you'd be right. You'd be
yeah.
right. There's a YouTube video that you can watch where a guy did a review. He went through page by page and did a review of the book, and he
So
mentioned, that it was
yeah,
very Star Wars heavy, and it is. It's very Star Wars heavy, and
so I don't know if you guys can see this, but there is something that inspired a lot of Star Wars right there, like right there,
yeah.
right?
Hmm.
Larian, right? That's where a lot, like the Cantina scene, the European artists that work on Star Wars, Cantina scene is right from there, from the 1960s. Laureline and Valerian, and if
Oh
that's
yeah,
something
yeah.
you guys haven't read before,
Mhm.
and
Well, I
don't know
mean,
much about,
people don't realize how inspired George Lucas was by so many
yeah,
different things, by
yeah,
samurai movies and old pulp
Akira
serials and
Kurosawa,
things like that. And I'm
yeah,
sure the peers at the time easily identified it because it was so close to what they grew up on.
yeah,
So people our age are quick to probably identify these connections, but maybe the younger audience would not. I don't know.
yeah,
Um, but I just want to say one thing about the audience is that this is all for them. I mean, I'm the same as them. I mean, I am the audience for so many pop culture and comic book things, and whatever respect I would want is the same respect I feel like I have to show them, because I was not a social media guy prior to about 2 years ago. I mean, you could go, my Facebook is barren up to about 2 years ago. Once I realized that I have to promote myself because everyone else is doing it. So I either need to be doing it too, or just forgotten. And so I have, and the amount of people that have sent me such kind message, I've not gotten not one negative thing, not one in all these years from so many people. And I could not be more grateful to all of them for their thoughts and their kindness and generosity. And if I did something for you that earned me that, let me tell you, you've certainly given me the same in return with your support. So it means the world to me, because without it, I wouldn't be able to do what I do. So I am eternally grateful, and I have that audience to thank for, the ability to do what I do. And it means the world to me. So I just want to say that to the audience.
That's something that, like, this morning while I was, writing and editing and stuff, I think it must have been like New Zealand time, was about 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock this morning, and Thinking Critical was on, right? And they had a panel and they're talking about stuff and shops and stuff. And I just said, the customer is all, I'll write down in their comments, I said, the customer is all, because without the customer, what the hell am I doing? Right. Because I'm just doing it for myself. I'm that guy who met me at a stand-up when I was reading a story and said, I don't want to share this. This is my little precious. How do you, how can you, don't you feel like the audience will do something with them? It's like, dude, the reason I do this is for the audience. I want to share my story. I'm a storyteller.
Of
I want to
course,
tell you people out there,
right.
And so I'm not that arty-farty guy who thinks holding my little character to me is the most precious thing in the world. It's not. I want to be able to tell your story, and you're the same, and most creatives are the same. Here is my beautiful creation. Now,
I hope you like it. I hope you enjoy it. I hope I can bring you the joy that was brought to me. When I was the reader, when I was the person consuming this entertainment, I want to be able to give back, and that's what I love, And you don't have to cater to your audience. You don't have to give them the story that they want. You have to challenge them. You have to, bring them something that they like to know more of. They might even hate what you like. Oh God, this character is story, but all right, what happens next? All right, it doesn't matter, but you have to elicit some kind of response in your audience that makes them want to continue to follow you.
Apathy is the worst, isn't it, to a writer?
Yeah, sure, absolutely.
Like, I don't care what happens next,
Yeah,
but
I don't always know what's going to happen in these stories. I don't, but the fact that I don't know means that you don't know either. But you can certainly try to figure it out. And I'll try to figure it out as I go too. Figure out. I don't know what is some of it. I usually have the beginning and the end locked in, and then whatever happens in the middle to get us there, I don't know. I don't know.
I sometimes don't even have the ending. I'm like, because I'm working on a huge arc, and now I've got to do a fourth set, like with the Zealandia thing that I'm working on this morning, right? So I'm writing and I'm going, oh, this is going to go this way. Yeah, I'm happy with it going that way. And suddenly I'm like, boom. I'm like, what the hell? I didn't see that coming. Okay, might as well just work on that then. It just happened, and I had already worked out what I was going to do. It's like, there's wyverns dropping freaking jars of fire on this freaking, marketplace. I'm like, I didn't envision that like last week.
Sure, yeah. You have to be open. I mean, I love that. I mean, I never write intentionally. I always write accidentally. I'll just be doing something completely innocuous or something else, and then all of a sudden I go, wait, oh, that can mean okay, because you want to have that sort of. I think the South Park guys have this sort of Bible that they say where you don't want to say and then, you want to say this happened, and so therefore this happened.
That's it.
Because
Therefore.
cause and effect, cause and effect, cause and effect, not this, then that, then that,
Yeah.
because it challenges you. It means that your characters have to affect one another. Their actions and their directions have to influence, because that's how we are as human beings. We're influenced by our peers and the people that are closest to us. And they realize that very early on. I mean, it's a silly cartoon, but if you actually watch it with a critical eye, they know what they're doing in terms of storytelling. And that's why that cartoon has survived for 20 plus years, maybe 30 years.
Yeah,
So
when it first came out, I was in a religious group kind of setting, right? So didn't watch it, wasn't a thing. And now, like, I mean, I think must have been around about 2000, which is like about 5 years later. I started watching it and then went back and watched it all, and now I'm all caught up. And I find that it's just such a amazing allegory on life, but told from his point of views, and like realizing how weird we adults are, sometimes when we don't see what the kids see. And so I've sort of got in my head, like probably since like about 2000s, where it's like I want to see through the eyes of youth, like my young me, and how it affects me when somebody tells me that my music sucked at that time. Why am I listening to this music? Or why do I like that? And I'm gonna be that person. And so when somebody goes, "Oh, that comic, that sucks," I'm going, "Well, that's okay. If you don't like it, that's fine. But I mean, I'll tell you why I like it, kind of thing. Because now I'm having like a teenager, and I'm not having my adult brain on. And I think that sort of like frees me from trying to be adulting, right? And I think that it sort of also stops you trying to pretend to be an adult. Sometimes we try to mature too fast. And I think, so I think that's what watching South Park does for us. It makes us a bit humble in the way we view things. Now, Nugget here, who's an animator and also a caricature artist, and he tells me I say his name wrong all the time, but I'm just going to call him Nugget. But Ross is his real name, and he's a Kiwi artist. So he's asking, like, I've asked people to ask questions if they have any questions. So when you are working on all of the process to create the comic, do you have a posse of friends, colleagues that you show them the progress for getting feedback from them?
I did more so in the studio days when I was working back in the early days, but not so much these days. It's not that I would be against it. I'd like to bounce certain things off certain people. When I draw for a client, I try to address in the beginning, do you want to give me direction, or do you want me to just go? And that usually defines, how much input is there. I haven't written anything that anyone else has read since Scarlet Crush, so I don't know how I'm going to work that. I'm sure I'll give it to some people to just kind of read through. I mean, it's important to do that. It's scary, but you have to suck it up and just go. And you don't have to agree. I mean? Someone is not living with those characters the same way that you do. And if you know that character would do this, then you have to trust yourself. If someone has a good idea, oh, well, hell yeah, I'll take that. Sure. If it helps my story get better, I will take the good idea. Absolutely. I've written with other people before. I wrote with a writer named Mark Polton. We worked on a book together that never came to fruition, but we would talk on the phone all the time about the story, and we'd go back and forth and back and forth. We'd feed off each other, and he'd come up with something, and then I'd go, well, let's add this to it. And he'd go, okay, cool. And I'd come up with something. He'd say, let's add this to it. It was fun. It was so much fun. I love that process. I actually think that I write better with a partner than I do by myself sometimes, depending on how close I am to the story. I think with Scarlet Crush, I want to keep it solely me. But if I were to come up with something new, I'd like to, because I have so many stories to tell that I would like to write and draw Scarlet Crush, but I have this whole anthology series called The 13th Hour that consists of about 3 different books. And I would love to write them and have someone else draw them. If I ever get to a monetary place to make that happen, that'd be great, but it's not easy. So we'll see how things go.
I mean, it's hard being, having coming up ideas and not having the time or the finances to make it work.
Yeah.
And I mean, I'm fine, grateful that I'm able to do things slowly too there, because I have several books coming out all the time and I'm working on several all the time. And these are new ones, right? There's like a whole pile of freaking old stuff that's been written over the last 20 odd years that I haven't even touched on yet. But, it's kind of, talking about that, do you like jot down every idea you have, or do you just go, oh no, this one makes better, so I'll write that down? Or do you write down anything?
Okay, so I realized because I found a bunch of old art from a bunch of old stories, and I realized the process that I used to use that I'll probably use again is when I'll give myself a typed up outline right before I draw the comic book, and I start to draw the comic book by doing thumbnail sketches of each page. So by the time I'm ready to do that, I have at least some kind of written guidance to help me through it, but I'm not afraid to defer away from it if I feel it in the moment. But no, I like to keep things very loose. I'll even write the dialogue as I'm drawing it. You know what I mean? Like, this sounds good. This sounds good as I'm drawing it, to keep it natural and flowing. But for the most part, issue is already up here. And I have all the major tent poles and beats of that issue pretty locked in.
Okay.
But yeah, I'm going to have to, because that's what I end up doing. I always do the tent poles in my mind. And then when I sit down to type, that's when I have to fill in all the in-betweens, and that's what I usually do at that point.
So I have a ton of Top Cow comics. I have Witchblade up there, #1. I have when Alan Moore was over there. But one of the major ones that I have from Top Cow is almost every single Rising Stars series that JMS did there.
Yeah, it's a great book.
Like every single. And I think probably some of the variants are missing from that series, but every story I have, because that's how I got into Image Comics in about 20s.
That book was ahead of its time. It really was. It was very much, because if it came out now, it would immediately be on Netflix as a show or HBO as a show immediately. But back then, that wasn't the way things went, but it was amazing book.
Yeah, I mean, it really brought me back into comics, because I was a Babylon 5 fan, and I wasn't like a Image fan or anything like that, or a reader of Image. This is because I took a 5-year break, because my first series, lots of comic collection got burnt in a fire. And so when I went away to film school, there was a comic store there, because over here where I live now, Whangarei doesn't have one, until I put one up here, a couple of years back. And so when I was there, I walked in and I said, what are you into? Oh, I'm into Babylon 5, man. I'm into Risk games. And the guy goes, oh, there was this. He's working on Amazing Spider-Man. That's how I got into Spider-Man. And then there's also all the stuff with
J. Michael Straczynski is who you're talking about.
Yeah. Right. And I went, okay, so, and this is after it had been over, right? It had been over, and there was this whole dispute over, we're not going to finish the last 3, whatever. And I said, well, back order them. And I ended up paying something like from $10 to $20 per issue, New Zealand, right? Wow. And that's about 20, 30 books. And so you just that one set, and I had to work 2 jobs while I was a full-time student to be able to afford that shit.
Wow.
Because that's a lot of comics. And that's when I came back into comics, and I haven't stopped ever since. That's like 20 odd years. And actually maybe 22 years this year. And it's interesting, and like you're saying, could be on Netflix and all that now, and streaming or on TV. But that series they did with I can't remember what it was called, which basically like Tim Kring, whatever, felt like it was lifted off that, and there was that whole hoo-ha about that at that time. save the cheerleader, save the world thing. I can't remember.
It was
what
called Heroes, was the name of the show.
Heroes. Yeah, it felt like it was lifted, like each character was almost lifted off it, and that's what I think destroyed the Rising Stars. What basically just that IP was just destroyed any chance of ever going forward because of that sort of implementation there. But you're right. It's like, if you guys haven't read that, please check it out. Rising Stars from Top Cow. Hardcovers are out there. I've got a friggin' signed hardcover copy, volume 1, as well as all the others. From number 1 and onwards. It's
it
really
was
good
J.
story.
Michael Straczynski created it and wrote it, and then the amazing Gary Frank drew it, and it was gorgeous.
Gary's amazing on it.
Oh, Gary is an amazing artist. He's still an inspiration to me to this day with what he does. He's one of those guys that I will always defer to when I'm stuck, because I love his rendering. I love his style, his storytelling. Everything is just intricate and gorgeous and very thoughtful. His work is very thoughtful. It's not like the 90s was very bombastic and in your face.
Yeah.
But when you want to draw something that's thoughtful, and you can see it in the work with the characters and the expressions and the way he sets up the camera and the shots. I mean, it's beautiful. He was a refreshing change of pace.
So since we're talking about Gary Frank, let me just inspiration. I'm trying to figure out if I can spell inspiration right. That seems to be right. So tell us about the people that you're inspired by, because I know as a writer, I'm inspired by many writers, and I have their books, and I like their books, because I can always, go, okay, if I'm not that I'm stuck, but I'm like, I know I have it there, and in my collection, and then if I look at their style, I think about where do I fit in when I go to write. What are your what are the artists that inspire you? You just mentioned Gary Frank. What other ones are there that inspire you?
Well, going back to the very, very early days, I was very much a John Byrne fan. He had drawn the most work with X-Men, Fantastic Four, Man of Steel, and he was consistent. You know what I mean? He wasn't someone who come in and then disappear, because there are artists that I loved. The two artists that are my favorite to this day are Art Adams and Michael Golden. And they were the most impressionable artists on me as a young person. And I mean young person, not even close. I'm talking like single digit, maybe like 10 or 11, 12.
Yeah.
But they didn't do enough consistent work for me to really call them an inspiration, other than just their work as a whole. But yeah, I tried to emulate sort of John Byrne in the beginning, as many people of my age did. They grew up on him. And then it got into, the Image era, or the pre-Image era. And I loved Will Spatacchio, and Jim Lee was probably my biggest inspiration through the 90s. Still is to this day, not to say that he's not. But, there's been so many different artists that have influenced me, and I learned to appreciate art by people like Lee Bermejo, who uses a lot of deep shadows and blacks in his work. Same thing with Tim Bradstreet. I learned a lot from those guys, because it wasn't about the rendering. It was about the lighting, representing the lighting with their style of rendering. And that really, you can go back through some of my old work and see a lot of it more. It's the more obscure era of my work, but there was a lot of it there, a lot of their influence there. But really, I was influenced by all the Image guys, all of them, because that was what was hot and popular. That was selling. That's what excited me when I go to the comic shop. I had a huge Todd McFarlane phase that I was trying to draw like him. But I somehow, I think, settled into my own style. And I just kind of do that for the most part. But I still love looking at other artists' work to get me excited, to get me inspired, to give me ideas, to say, oh, I didn't think of rendering it like that, or wow, maybe I need to do a little more here. But the thing is that once I used to be so render heavy, so many lines. That's the 90s. That was all about lines. And once I started coloring my own work, I realized that I could represent those same elements in color. So I started to really pare my pencil and ink work back,
Right.
and keeping it more simplistic and adding those elements in with the color. But I know the 90s are very, very hot again. And I feel like I need to push a little bit further with my rendering. And just, I'll try to add the color in as best as I can. But that's what people, and I still admire that heavily rendered line work that
Yeah.
artists used to do and still do, a lot of them. And I think it's easier to maintain that when you're just a penciler, but when you're the entire artist, you almost want to color that simplicity. You want to color that simplicity so you can bring it to life in a different way. It's like the drawing is its own living, breathing creature, and then you put it aside, and then you scan it in to the computer, and then you start working in Photoshop, and it's almost like a brand new creature now.
Yeah.
So they live separate from each other, but combine into a whole image. And that's kind of where I'm at now. So I have to kind of retrain my brain a little bit to perhaps get a little bit more comfortable with the detailed rendering again, because I did enjoy it. I do enjoy it, but it didn't serve a purpose for a long time for me in my art. But now that I realize that it can again, I'm a little more inspired to bring it back.
So, because you're also writing as well, what are your writer inspirations?
Gosh, it's hard to say. It could literally be anything. I think in terms of the way that I write certain dialogue scenes and certain things like that, or internal monologues. I mean, the king of internal monologues to me is Frank Miller. That
Right.
man can write an internal monologue like nobody else, and that his writing style has influenced my work more than anybody else. And but it's hard to say because, like I said, I haven't written in years. So even though I have the story that I'm happy with in my head, finally, it took me a long time to get there. The question becomes now, I like writing naturalistic dialogue. I don't like writing. When I write, I don't think about other writers. I think about my real life interactions.
Yeah.
And how people speak and how they react and how they talk and what they say and what they don't say. And to me, real life is the greatest teacher of both art and writing. If you don't look at real life as an artist, you're cheating yourself out of half of what art is. And I see that. I see a lot of adult men or women, perhaps, writing or drawing things where I can look at it and go, you've never a day in your life drawn from life. You've only drawn from comics. And it has stunted your ability to be a good artist, unfortunately.
Yeah.
And anytime someone says, how can my art get better? What can I do? It's as simple as that. Draw from life.
Right.
That is the greatest teacher you will ever find. Pay attention to how a knee looks when it's straight, when it's bent, when it's from this angle, from that angle. Pay attention to the knee, the elbow, the face, the squint, the everything. You have to constantly be observing real life every minute of every day as an artist. And if you don't do that, you are depriving yourself of becoming your full potential. And that's how I feel about it. And as someone I've never been professionally trained, but I've trained myself and talked to enough artists to know that when you don't have that, when you haven't had that time to draw from real life, it is so evident in your work, and it's as noticeable as that. It's so quick and noticeable. And I don't ever give my opinion on anyone's work unless I'm directly asked.
Right.
What do you think of my work is not asking me for my opinion. It just, to me, it's not. It's just like, hey, what do you think? Hey, man, looks great. I don't want to, but if you really say, hey, look, man, I really need some help. I don't feel like I'm getting anywhere. I feel like then I go, okay, I will take time and definitely give you some advice that was given to me. I am far, far, far from ever being a master in art by any means.
Yeah.
But I know enough of the immediate basics that I can help people who need that help the same way that I did when I was starting my career. And I would be happy to give it to them because I want to see everybody reach their full potential. But, I leave it open. I tell people, hey, man, if there's anything I can do, if you need any direction, any help, I'm here. If they take advantage of it, great. If they don't, then that's what they decide. And I realized that by not asking me these direct questions, they're basically saying, I just want to be where I'm at. I don't really want to hear anything that's going to make me feel bad or sad or upset. Yeah. And I'm not looking to do that by any means. I just want to help. And as an artist and a creator, you have to be open to that because that's why you have the master and the apprentice, right? That's been the way since the dawn of man. You always have a master, you always have an apprentice. And I'm not a master, but if you want to take that and kind of push it down a little bit, I can be something to help somebody else. And I was helped, over the years invaluably by other people and that I would have never gotten to on my own and never thought of on my own. And I still push myself in that regard. Looking at other people's work to this day, every day, there's not a day that goes by that I don't absorb 100 pieces of art from all the mediums that exist. And I just go, awesome, great, saving that one. That's inspirational. You need to have it. You need to have it. And you can't just look at the style. The style, I did that when I was, 14, 15 years old. I just looked style, style, style. And then I realized style without substance is never going to be a professional level. If you want to be a professional, you have to have the style and the substance. And the substance more than the style. You really do. You have to have the substance more than the style.
I think that's why we see artists that stand out, right? Because they have style and substance.
Yes.
One of the people we can bring up like a lot is Mike Mignola, right? Because he has a unique style and he's created that style over the time. And of course, also, you mentioned earlier about Frank Miller. I was just thinking our book, I have like Sin City books there and Greg Knowles and also on floppies. But, we just have black and white art style and just like you were talking about color and shading and all that and rendering, my brain just goes, I recognize that style and I know that works there. I think a lot of people are too much about flash and not about the substance because they think like if I do it this way, it's going to blow up. But really, if you want your work to endure, which is what I want, I don't want it to just be like, oh yeah, one and done.
Right.
Nobody cares about that. Now it's on the shelf. I only collect stuff that I want to look at all the time or have it there all the time. And and I want to be that way as well. I want people to be able to have that there for myself. And so I'll look at criticism wherever it's due. When we put out Robot Nation, I sent a whole bunch of review copies out. I had people come and go, oh, this, and I went, okay, let's fix that. This, and I'll fix that. Because by the time it actually goes to Kickstarter, I want it to be where nobody can say anything about this, piece of work. But that's when it's the final public thing. And between that time and me working on it until it's to the public, I can change, I can rewrite, I can edit and do everything to it, seek, critique, reviews, input. And then, like we were talking earlier, you don't have to take it all on board, until you feel like they're in the right. And, and it's something worth taking on board to make your work even better. You have all this time in between and you can always reach out, like I said, to someone to say, hey, and I think we do a disservice to ourselves in our art when we don't, because we may be too arrogant or ego is just not in the right place at the time, or even our head's not in the right place at the time because we're not ready to accept, a critique on our work. And I think, seeing someone like you talk about that at such a, having been in an industry and doing for so long, I just wish more people would think that way as well. The up and coming young people, And stuff like this is kind of like for me is helpful, and I hope everybody else gets some help out of it as well. Is there anyone who's like ever stood out to you as a mentor, like that you just go, yeah, this is the person that sort of like made sure that I was on the track or whatever, but not that in person, but like even just by the fact that they're there doing their work, you're like, oh yeah, something they said got me, thinking this way and that way.
I don't know. It's hard to say. I mean, no one personally and directly. Unfortunately, I didn't have those opportunities to work with people who might have helped me in the ways that I needed or wanted at the time. But I've been able to, on my own, find the things that I need to find that inspire me, whatever that may be. It could be just a quote that hits me the right way, and I go, you know what, that makes sense to me. I like that. I'm going to use that. And I think when I was younger, I had a different mindset. It wasn't in an aggressive way, but there was jealousy because there was so much competition. And I would see certain people's work and I would go, oh, man, I'm jealous. I want to draw like they draw. And I couldn't, maybe even, I mean, there are guys that in their 20s, both now and back then, that are better than I'll ever be. And that's okay. And I had to learn that over time. I really did. I had to learn that. And my entire outlook on artwork has completely changed. It's gone from that tinge of jealousy. It's a tinge. It was never an aggressive, outright way ever. Because I'm too insecure and too humble to
I'm
feel
just
like
like
I'm deserving of that. To be honest, I don't feel deserving. But yeah, I definitely have flipped completely and realized that there is so much more pleasure and so much more to learn in admiring other people's work and learning from it than there is of being jealous of it. Being jealous is not going to get you anywhere. It's just not. It has no positive reaction, but inspiration, that has positivity to it. And that's where I like to keep my mind at. And thankfully, over the years, it's become a natural thing. It's not a, John, don't forget. No, it's just, I love it, love it, love it, love it. I couldn't, even if I couldn't draw, I'd still be looking at this artwork every day going, man, that's amazing. It's awesome. It's so cool. It's great. So that is a much better way to live life. I mean, I think once you get there, things get a little bit easier for you. You have more fun with it. Am I mad at myself that I draw something that doesn't look the way I want it to look? Of course, all the time. But that goes back to what I was saying before. There's always a tomorrow, until there's not. But as long as you have a tomorrow, try again. This face that I wanted to get so perfect didn't come out anything like I wanted to come out, but there's always tomorrow, and I'll get it right tomorrow, hopefully. And with that open-endedness and that anticipation and that hope, it makes me want to draw the next day. That's what makes me want to draw,
I always go, I'm jealous and of somebody doing something, and I'll turn around and go, I'm going to use that to inspire me, because it never gets stuck at jealous. And you're right, if you get stuck at jealous, you become bitter, you become twisted and stuff.
Right.
And it's like, use that as an inspiration, and your next, you're more free. I find like when you do that, it's free. Did you, because now you're working more and you're creating more.
Right. Because life is a journey, and you have to accept it as a journey. People go, oh, I just want to be happy. I want to be happy. The best you can achieve in the journey of life, to me, is contentment, which is being okay, with life, with where you're at, with what you're doing, that contentment and not having self-loathing or anything like that, you can achieve contentment. That is an achievable goal. But happiness is a momentary thing. And if you think it's the finish line that you can pass and get to, you're going to be wrong. You're going to be miserable. So that's just once, again, I had to realize certain things in life because I came from a very difficult upbringing, and I didn't have a father figure to guide me through life. So everything that I've learned, in terms of life, I had to kind of like learn on my own for the most part, in terms of being a man in this world, and how to handle it and how to deal with it and what to think and how to feel and all these things. I always had to look outside myself to understand how to do those things, and didn't have the helping hand that I wish that I had had. Outside my mother, of course, she's always been there for me and still is to this day, thank God. But yeah, it's just a journey. It's so tied together for me, because the same theories that I apply to life, I apply to art. So when you ask me, it's hard to take one from the other. They're so intermingled, So.
So I know we said it's in the future, Scarlet Crush and stuff, but with all the work that you're taking on for other people, because of course we got to live and artists
Sure.
and all that. When do you think, because I'm gushing because I want to see this, right? Because I'm excited and
Right.
and when do you think you'll be able to go, here we're going to be coming this time out?
I mean, I want to do it this year. I want to launch a campaign this year. It depends on, I'd like to be in the middle road of the two theories that I told you about in terms of crowdfunding. I'd like to have enough done to make the audience feel comfortable and entice them to want to buy it, not just use words, but use images.
Yeah.
So I want to have enough done of that. But at the same time, still use crowdfunding in the way that potentially it was meant to be used, which is you present an audience with what you want to do. And they say, I would like to have that product. Here's the money I'm giving you to make that a reality. And that's all it's supposed to be. And I'm not opposed to either theory. I wish that I had, the ability to stop working, had a nest egg of money to live off of, and draw Scarlet Crush and then just launch it when it's ready to go. I would love to do that, but that's not a possibility. So I have to find that middle ground of, here's enough of what I hope you like to see and what you will be getting, but it's still a little ways out. And if you trust me and you like what you see, I hope you support it. That's probably going to be where it's going to be at, because I just don't see, I do want to do an art book, because I've got 20 years of commissions that I have not published anywhere. Obviously, they've been online. You can see them on my Facebook and Instagram, some, but I've got about 20 years of commissions that I could put into a book that cost me nothing. They've already been drawn. So I put them in a book and do that as a campaign and use that money to help fund.
The first thing you do, and then that sort of builds up there, because that's awesome, because like you said, 20 years of freaking amazing work load that you've done, and now you've got who's just done a Marvel book? Has just been
Finch, Dave Finch. He's doing a Marvel book right now. Yeah.
So now that's out there, and I think that's what sort of meant do that, because
everyone's saying that was a good idea that came from Tom Hutchinson. He was the one who said that you should do that, and I thought, genius, because that's free money. That's going to be the nest egg I use to help Scarlet Crush come into fruition.
That's right,
and it's going to help a lot. So. Again, I don't find any problem with doing these covers for everyone. I love it. I enjoy it. I'm happy to do as many that come my way, because that's going to expand the audience even for that art book, because the ultimate goal of the art book for me is to fund Scarlet Crush #1.
Right.
That's the ultimate goal. If people like it and they enjoy it and they want to have it, great. I'm happy and thankful. But it's basically a Kickstarter. You know what I mean? In that sense, it's a funding of a funding.
That's it. And I think having that out there, and like you said, it's going to help have some funds there. And so you're not having to chase after work, right? Now there's a bit of a nest egg enough for the next couple of months. So you can spend 3-4 months, if that's enough money coming from it, that you, or even a month, right? You're just there, and
anything will help. Anything will help for sure. Yeah.
I think the art book, Tom is, is very smart as a business person when it comes to comics.
And everyone I've mentioned it to has said, "Hey, great idea." And I thought, all right, well, that's just more confirmation that that's the direction I should go in, you know, because I don't know. I mean, I'm very new to all this crowdfunding stuff. You know, when I was doing comic books, all I did was draw, and the company did everything else. I didn't do anything but draw. Now I got to do it all on my own. I got to promote. I got to promote not just the book, but myself, because I think they're intermingled in a way that never have been before. You know, the creator and the product. I mean, they can like you as a creator and almost not even care about your product, but they'll still support you because that's how dedicated and caring and nice and generous that the audience we have is. You know, so I try to get myself out there. I'm trying to get the work out there. I'm trying to get everything out there. And once it reaches a certain level that I feel like, okay, that's good. You know, maybe around spring or summer, launch the art book. And then by the end of the year, hopefully launch the campaign, the Scarlet Crush #1, have half the issue done. I'm going to live off of that to do the other half. And then we'll be rolling because all I want to do is comic books. And as long as one issue pays for the next and allows me to live in between, that's all I want to do. I don't need to have a yacht. I don't need to have a mansion. I don't need to have this. I don't need to have that. Just let me pay my bills. Yeah, I'm done. That's it. I'll step back and just do the work.
Well, that's a dream, right? Just a simple dream, just to be able to just be enough to get by and be happy and buy that comic book that you want or that toy for me. You know?
Exactly. Yeah.
And that's it. You don't like, you know, I look at all these people with millions and millions of dollars and I'm going, you know what I would do? I would pay more artists, get more work done, you know, and so we get more book out. That's all I care about. You know, I don't want to freaking this. I just want that. And I think, and the other thing about this is that you have a lot of friends who have come to you for covers. And now, like we were just mentioning earlier, all those people, right, will be sharing those pages. I'll be sharing your links and I'll be saying, here's an art book coming. Hey, also, I'm quite inspired about Scarlet Crush. So how about you guys like help along with everybody else get this freaking thing moving so we can get the book really quick. But the other thing is all the amazing stuff that you can offer on top of the book. It's not like going to a freaking bookshelf and or a bookstore and it's just a book. You know, crowdfunding allows you to have stickers, posters. You know,
I mean, my dream is to have an action figure. I've only done one. We did a Evangeline never had one, which was crazy to me. But Lady Pendragon, Matt and I did a Lady Pendragon action figure, which I sent you an image of. And that was great. But you know, if I could have Scarlet Crush action figures, holy crap! Action figures.
I would love
it's like, here's my passion: 49% comic books, 51% toys. That's just how I am. You know, that's the only thing that could steer me away from. Right, exactly. And they're all behind me too.
I'm thinking if you have like a redhead with wings, I'm getting that because look, my main character herself is a freaking
Siren,
right? You know, and so Incredible is a redhead. So now I've got redhead. You know, I've got redhead, and there is many more up there I can't freaking get to, but I was just reason before I was looking around was like I was looking at Angel, right, from X-Men, and that with the wings and stuff. So, you know, added to the thing, and that of course is the Red Sonja, the original redhead, right? I'm trying to get that sorted this year, the Red Sonja and a Conan figure, but they end up freaking, you know, for us here it's about over $100 for a small figure. So yeah, man, I mean, I'm so excited to hear what you're doing with this.
Thank you.
And
I appreciate it.
I just can't wait. And I'm gonna be sharing your links and stuff like that, as I mentioned. The other thing, like I do, as we close off here, we only got about a couple of minutes, but I like to keep it within it because I know that time is precious to every artist, every writer that comes on here, because that's time away from your work. Now, at the end of the show, I always do like what I call a words of wisdom segment.
If you are a creative person, if you are an artist, you can get joy from it without ever becoming a professional. I understand that comic books is the one industry that exists where everyone who enjoys it also wants to do it for a living. And I get that because that's exactly how I was. But when people bring me their portfolios and stuff, I always try to find out, like, are you drawing just to have fun and you enjoy it? or are you trying to be professional? Because they're two different things. And if you're just doing it to enjoy it, then please do. Please just continue to do whatever you're doing and enjoying it. If you want to be a professional, there is a path that you do have to follow. You can't really deviate from it. It's just like any other career. You know, just because I put a Band-Aid on my arm doesn't mean I can call myself a doctor any more than just because I can actually draw something that I can call myself a professional. And that's not to discourage anyone. It's just to prepare you mentally and emotionally for how difficult this career can be. And it's difficult. I've had nothing but ups and downs, you know. It is a struggle. It has been a struggle. I've gone through times in my life where I had to scrounge in my couch for change to go buy some ramen. You know, it's not always fun, but if you enjoy and love creating, if you enjoy and love art, don't let anything deter you from that ever. Even if you're just the voyeur, even if you're just the person who likes to read the comic books and likes to look at the artwork, you know, there's something in that for you that is not shameful, and nor should it be discouraged. So, you know, you just have to find your own path in life and do what feels right and do good by your fellow man and appreciate the people who do for you. That's huge for me. I can't tell you enough how important the people who have helped me throughout my life, not just my career, but my life, have so much meaning to me. And oftentimes I forget to express that in the ways that I should, but it's important, you know. Just, you know, I love good people. I hope to be a good person to anybody in my life that I meet. And I think if we all aspire to be that to one another, this world will get a lot better, a lot faster. You know, there's no need to bicker on the internet about nonsense that at the end of the day, when you put your head on the pillow, means nothing to you. You know, I understand that there's something enjoyable about getting the attention, but there's so many other positive ways to get it. And I would encourage those routes over, you know, fighting on the internet about, well, I don't even need to tell you because you already know, the audience knows, you know, what we all bicker about. You know, we all have our opinions, but there's no need to hurt each other over them. And that's what I got.
So where can people find you? I know I've got your Facebook open, but like,
That's pretty much the main thing I do. I do mainly Facebook because I find it to be more interactive. I know a lot of people use Instagram, which I have an Instagram. Both are just my name. So it's at John Stinsman on Instagram, and then my name, John Stinsman, on Facebook. So you can follow me in both places. I have not been able to get a lot of traction on Instagram. I don't know why. I don't know what to do that. I'm so excited about artwork that I don't even want to learn how to do some of this social media stuff, you know?
Yeah.
But I know that when I post stuff on Facebook, people comment and I can have a conversation with them beyond that. Instagram is just like, oh, cool, a little like, a like. It's great and everything. It's a great visual platform, which is what I do. But it you know, at some point I'll get that up and running way more, but I am there, and there's probably stuff on there that I haven't put on Facebook and vice versa.
Do you have a Twitter, John?
No, because and from day one, I just never saw that as a positive thing. I just don't. Right. You know, it's just it's to me that is the hub of everything I hate about the internet, and I don't want to be a part of it, to be honest. You know, I just don't.
Right. So I just mentioned because I was like, that way I could like at you when I share the, you know, links.
Sure, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, man. So thank you. And we didn't go through a lot of the artwork, but I'm gonna, you know, disperse it when I actually do the edited version of this, which is not like when I edit the interviews, I never take away from what we actually talk about. It's just like I'll just put in like a, you know, little snippet at the start, and that's it, and remove myself, you know, the intros and all that. But I'm glad that you sent me so many artwork, because then I can put it over my face, you know, and you can because there's awesome things that are there. Like there's so many.
You can put it over my face too. It's okay.
Like, but yeah, I mean, I'm just so excited to hear what you're going to bring and what's on coming. And I think that's the great thing about crowdfunding and Kickstarter and all the other crowdfunding sites. It allows creatives to finally be able to connect with the audience in a way they
Yeah.
haven't ever been
Yeah.
able to. And to get special things that we could only get if we had the money to get at that frigging convention over there.
Yeah.
But now you can just go, hey, wait, you've got to add on a poster or what trading card? Let's put that on. And like this week, I mean, I'm talking about Tom, right? Tom had a whole bunch of stuff last week, I think it was, and he just put up one of my favorite indie comics, which was I always forget the name of it. I don't know why, but it's about the angels and angels and demons and
Penny for Your Soul.
Penny for Your Soul, and you had to cover up, and I went, I want that.
You're welcome, Tom. Go ahead.
Yeah, and then I always forget, right? Penny for Your Soul, and then he did a live stream, and then I said, I'll take that. And then I said, oh, do you have a website, man? He goes, yeah. And okay, oh, can you sign a couple? Yeah, okay. Boom. Now I've got a friggin' package arriving from him, and hopefully it's registered mail, so it doesn't. But
yeah,
this is what we can do now, which from direct to the writer creator, which we never could do because there's a wall. There's always been this wall, and
right,
where it's kept us away from, I mean, I remember. Gosh, who's that person that in the, I think it was around about 210 that passed away, who worked at one of the Aspen, who's worked at Aspen and also at
Turner, Michael Turner.
Yeah, I used to actually talk to Michael Turner on Facebook.
Yeah, he was a great guy.
Yeah, and he just like we just chat like for whatever. And this is when I was first getting into comics, or and it was just so cool to have their moments. And now sometimes like it just becomes this whole warfare going on. So I like being able to just seeing what everybody's up to and chatting and getting comments. I mean, like this week I've had two people. One of the guys who just basically did a pinup for one of my books, just volunteered it. This is what we always want the relationship between the artist and the creative and the fan and the crowd audience. So I'm glad, and I thank you for taking your time, man, and I appreciate it.
I appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, man. For the rest of, is it evening there? So
yeah,
have a good evening, good week.
Thank you.
And for everybody else who's watching, thank you for watching, and please check out John Stinsman's work at his Facebook down there in the chat. And it's this one, just in case you don't see that. It's John M. Stinsman on Facebook. So
I don't know if that's the right one. I think it's just John Stinsman. I'm not sure there's an M in there.
No, it comes with his M. Your name is without the M, like on your Facebook.
I have an old Facebook that's been non-existent for over a decade. So I don't know if you found that one or if you found. But anyway,
I've got the most recent one.
Scarlet Crush is the big banner.
Yeah, and Power Hour is on one of the art pieces.
Okay, right on.
All right, that's a beautiful piece of work, by the way.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
All right, everybody, kakite
right.
Wherever you are, be well, be safe, and have a good week, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks, everybody.